Hello! Welcome to this new installment of our weekly development stream about our next game, ScourgeBringer. So, this week I'd like to show you our latest progress on the combat systems because we are starting to work very seriously on how our combat are going to work and so on. So I'm going to show you where we are and where we are heading and so on. And well, so like always, if you have any question or any comment, feel free to jump in the chat or maybe even just say hi. But feel free to comment on anything. I would be very glad to answer any kind of question. So let's start by launching the current prototype of the game. So what have been changed in this last week? I continue to fine-tune the platforming system, like we did mostly, I believe, every week since a moment now. But we are really in a quest to find the best kind of control scheme. So and there are still stuff that are going to change because we had some very cool feedbacks lately. And what has been changed is, if you have been reading our newsletter, we are trying to revamp how anything that was close combat was working on. So you still have the slash move, and the slash move it kind of sticks to the enemies as some sort of aim assist when you start a combo on an enemy. This is to allow you to do some very simple air combo, and you want things to be very cool, fast, and smooth about this. What I changed also is the dash. So if you followed us on Twitter, you've been seeing this new animation. So previously the dash was simply a way to move around faster. And since we introduced the double jump, which basically does pretty much the same thing, but more in a more intuitive way because you only have to use one button to do so. So we converted the dash to be now an attack. So it's going to be an attack. It's going to be something like a combo starter, an attack you can't do quite often or every so often. That you're going to rush on enemies or being able to reach far enemies with this attack, with the dash. I'm going to try to show you by looking for an enemy. And sorry, I'm just watching what the cat is doing right now. She's trying to climb on the wall. So it's pretty weird. Well, okay. Well, sorry. So if there's an enemy, I'm just going to clean a bit this room. So this enemy here, right now the AI can go through thin platforms, so it's basically ignoring me. But this is going to change. But it's pretty cool because it can do much, and I can just show you how everything about this new dash attack is going to work. So I'm going to jump and try to start a combo by attacking this enemy with a dash and continue the combo mid-air. So I just have to jump, dash on him, and start a combo. And this is pretty much how we'd like everything about reaching enemies, trying to reach far enemies is going to work in the game. So here again, I'm just jump dash, or ear dash, or dash ear, and you can get everything you'd like to reach about this enemy. So yeah, so I've Sonia saying I also have problems with the cat while streaming, mostly because it's not my cat. Oh, okay. But yeah, cat can be sometimes a bit ass when you're streaming. I remember on a previous team, I got my webcam. It got attacked by the cat, basically. So, and what's also cool about this dash is that if you took a look before I performed the move, but if I just drop dash on the ground, there is something like a ground pounding, and or stomping, and we want this attack to be something like a zone attack, to be able to bring down enemies. And if I am on this scene platform, I can just drop down on this enemy and start fighting him. Another cool thing about this dash is we want this dash to be able to gather around enemy, to be able to like act like a vacuum to help you get several enemies into your line of sight and just go through them, and all the enemies are going to be impaled on your sword and follow you along the move, and at the end of the move you can very easily start to do a combo on all the enemies that were on your way. And so really want to be able to have this attack, this dash, to allow you to do some sort of crowd control, to be able to get several enemies at once and get them at the end. And okay, so here ground. So as you see, I've tried to perform a pounding on the ground, and the enemy basically have been dragged down with me. And maybe if I do this here, maybe the enemy is going to be dragged down too with me. So no, it didn't work because it was on platforms. But here, if I dash on this enemy, it's going to be attracted by the movement and so on. It doesn't work like this on enemies which are on walls, because these are wall mounted, so basically they're not going to be detached and so on. Okay, so that's pretty much our latest progress on this prototype and on working on the combat system. The ground pounding is not yet finished because the effect is not quite there yet. So when we are going to pound the ground, there's going to be another kind of effect with some dust going in the air, and we want every move in the game to be something like upgradable. I mean, to be able to add mods to your own move, to like change your fighting style and so on. And so the ground pounding is going to have a few mods, like one that is going to be able to throw some kind of projectile along the ground when you jump on it. Florian has been working on the animations of this attack, so this is what we are shooting for. So here you see that there is some effects with the smokes, with the dust and so on being projected when you hit the ground, and there is some kind of slash animation that goes on both sides. And we want this to be upgradable. I mean, to have some ways to increase the distance these slash are going to go along the ground, to be able like to do a very, very hard pound and to just get everything that is on the ground. So this is the kind of stuff we're looking for. Our combat system, we are trying to do a combat system that is not going to have any kind of dodge or be able to avoid attack and so on. We want everything to be based on offense, and even trying to avoid getting hit is going to be an attack. And for that, we have something like a smash attack. I believe it's this one. So this is an harder hit, but it's not. No, it's not this one. Okay, it's this one. So this is going to be something like a smash, like a smash in Smash Bros. I mean, it's the attack you are going to be using to finish a combo. And like if you feel like the enemy is going to die soon, or that the enemy is about to attack you, you can smash it and throw it away on the ground or on a wall so that it gets away from you, and when it starts attacking, you are no more in its range. And this is how we want everything about avoiding getting hit are going to work. I mean, you are not going to have something like a dodge, something like running away from a combat. We want the combat system to be very based on only attack. So if you are about to get hit, you just have to push the enemy away. The enemy is going to attack in thin air. And if you feel like it's safe again, you can just continue the combo by dashing again on the enemy and start again the combo. So we want things to work like this. And like the dash, we want also this attack to be upgradable, to be customizable, and so on. And for that, we have another heavy attack. So this one is like doing a full circle, and it's going to be a very, very heavy attack that is going to be able to push enemies in all directions. Like if you are some like ganged by enemies, you will be able to just push everything around, while the standard heavy attack is just going to push enemy forward or in front of you. And well, that's basically what I can show you about what we are about to do with this combat system. Well, if you have any question, feel free to ask and so on. So I believe that it was, I believe, Shunar who asked me on Twitter if we had any tools to make the game, or what kind of tool we were using to make the game. I sometimes discussed about this, or maybe in newsletter I wrote a few things about this. But and what can I show you about this? Yeah, so we're basically making the game with monogame in the C# language. Monogame, it's basically a high-level library, more like something that like DirectX or OpenGL. It's something a higher level abstraction of this kind of stuff. It's not an engine. It's not something like Unity that comes with a fully blown editor and scene compositing and so on. So when I work personally, I only have like lines of code in front of me in Visual Studio, and I have also a sprite opened. I'm basically using this kind of stuff. This is one of the sprite sheets we have in the game. So here you have all the animations of Kira's and enemies, like also particles and so on. And I don't edit myself this file because I'm a complete ass in in graphics. So that's basically the job of Florian here. And when it's done with an animation, we have our files which are synced between our computers. So I'm just using the same file he's using and trying to see how he placed everything in the sprite sheet and try to integrate them into the game. And I just keep that open because it's only to, see where are the sprites to get the coordinates and so on. So that's my only use of a sprite, is just to see what are the coordinates of each sprite and so on, so I can do my sprite sheet and etc. Yeah, Shuna, cool. I'm an Ixina guy from way back. My current work is with FNA. Yeah, but I remember you from the Ixina days. I believe it dates back a lot from when people were still publishing games on the Xbox Live Indie Games and so on. And that's pretty cool. Is a sprite a free tool? No, it's not free, but it's very, very cheap. It's about, I believe, something like $20, and it's a very, very cool tool because it's dedicated to only to pixel art and animation. It's very, very cool. Florian used to work on Photoshop. Our previous game, Neurovoider, which was also in a pixel art style, Florian only used Photoshop because he didn't knew about a sprite back then. When he knew about a sprite, he tried it for like 10 minutes and it couldn't use anything else. And it's very, very cool if you do pixel art. And it improves itself very, very regularly. The developer of Sprite is very cool and listen to a lot of feedback. And I believe it's also, I'm not sure if the software is open source. I think so. I don't know, but yeah, it's a paid software, but it's a very, very cool software, and it's very, very cheap for what it does. So it's very cool. So yeah, so using Monogame, which is an high-level library which allow you to program graphics, inputs, sound, and so on, everything that a game needs. And on top of that, I've built over time an engine, a 2D engine. And for ScourgeBringer specifically, I have made several tools, or at least one editor. It's actually starting. I'm going to show it to you. And here we go. So this is our game editor. It's everything we'd like to customize or do things quickly. I've made an editor for it. So most obviously there is an editor, a tile-based editor for everything that is room. So we hand designed each room, and then there is this stuff which is just a visualization of our procedurally generated levels. So this is basically the minimap, and for each square, for each tile, we fit a room in there and add all the doors to connect all of them. And on this editor, we also have a bullet editor. So that's basically to allow us to have a live preview and live editing of everything that is bullet and bullet patterns and enemy and so on. And for instance, like I live edit these bullets, I'm just going to add an angular velocity to here, so the bullet is going there. But it's a pretty simple tool, but it allows you to do all kind of things, and pretty much it's way more powerful than what we need in ScourgeBringer. But I wanted to do something reusable, something that we could use through multiple projects or anything else. And here I have another tool that is linked to the Ballot Editor. It's the Emitter Editor. It's here. This tab is really to do, complex patterns of bullets. I can define multiple points on the screen and saying which point is going to fire which bullets in which direction and in which pace and so on. And so you can really do some very complex stuff. Here I'm going to add 2 other points, and for this to work, I'm going to change, I believe, yeah, here. So I'm going just to tell my pattern to use the 3 points that I have. So right now it only uses the point number 0. So I'm going to tell him to also, each time he fire, to fire also on the point ID number 1 and also on the point ID number 2. And if I up here, and basically this, I believe I can move this around. Yeah. So I can move this around to test how things behave and so on. There's going also to be a live preview of a level here. So right now there is only like a blank level with white walls, but I will be able also to pick a level from our level stuff and be able to live preview how each patterns perform here. So going to catch up with the questions. Demi Giant asking, did you have more fun making the tools or making the gameplay? That's a tough question. Because I think if you look at this kind of tools, you may be wondering if I like doing tools. And yes, I like doing tools a lot. I've made a lot of crazy tools for Null Avoider, and I made some tool here. And the tool I've had the most fun with is this tool. So this is a tool to make complex animations with sprites. And if you know software like Flash or any kind of animation tool, basically, which has a timeline and be able to set keyframes, to set positions of sprites, rotations, and so on, or maybe even a skeleton. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do this kind of tool for a very long time, and I never done it because I kind of feared if I was capable to really do such a tool. I finally did it because in our previous game, Neurovoider, we was very frustrated about our boss design. We felt like it was lacking a lot of stuff and not working correctly. So in ScourgeBringer, we really want to do things right about the bosses right away. And so I started to make this tool because we want to be able to design some very cool attack patterns and very cool animation and have some very cool boss. Yeah. And we want to have unique bosses. And right now I only have a couple of them, and I also most obviously have crashes. But well, that's the same for any kind of development tools, I believe. I'm just going to restart and just show you a bit more about this. And yeah, I'm pretty proud of this timeline tool because I really didn't know if I was really able to put this together easily or not. And I thought it would take me something like 1 month, maybe 2 months to do such a tool. And actually, I believe that everything I've shown you so far, I did it in about 2 weeks or so. So that was very, very cool, and I'm very glad that this tool is done because that means we will really be able to do cool stuff with bosses, and I really can't wait to really integrate one of these boss in our prototype. Right now, there are absolutely no boss in the prototype because I still have to code everything that is AI logic and so on. But we have the animation, and we also have the attack. If I just press W, I go into another mode of this editor, and it's the weapon mode. And here I can define the attack patterns. So here on this boss, there is a weapon on each hand, on each palm. And if I just play the animation, here I have just defined a simple way to fire. So there's just here on the first line, the left hand that is going to fire on the 5th frame, and the right hand is going to fire from the 10th to the 15th frame. And it's very simple. I just have to make sequences of fires and so on. And the cool stuff is that all this animation tool is bone based, and it means that you have the torso of the boss and invisible arms and ends, and everything is linked together. And if I move something like, I'm going to switch mode, and if I add a rotation here to my animation, I can rotate the boss, and it's going to blend into the animation. And also, it also rotates everything that is the starting point of each fires and so on. So it means that the weapon are also rigged into our sprites and the bone of the boss. And we don't have to really care about from where the boss is going to fire and so on. We just have to define the animation and just tell the boss to fire here, fire here, fire here. And I believe this tool is going to be very, very useful when we are going to start really working on bosses and trying to integrate bosses with everything that is pattern, animations, and so on. So, yeah. So, yes, I like doing tools. I freaking like doing tools. And maybe in another life I would be something like a lead tool developer in a studio, I don't know. But yeah, I really like making tools, and I like that people use the tool, have a really usefulness of it, and are way more efficient. I like things to be efficient and simple, and I hope that all the tools that we are making here for ScourgeBringer are going to be efficient and cool enough. But so far so good. And I don't know if I can show you all the tools that we've been making for our previous game, Neurovoider, because there are some cool things that have been done there, and I'm going just to check if I can quickly open this project and check if I can show you a few stuff. Yeah, Shunar, if you think that your editor were hideous, prepare to see the kind of tools that we made for Neurovoider. I didn't open the right solution here, because in Neurovoider was a game I believe I have over-engineered this game. And I have three kind of editor. I have an enemy editor, a weapon editor, but the one that is going to be interesting is a tile editor, because it's quite complex, but it's not the most hideous. It's not quite hideous, this one, but just for fun, I'm going to show the weapon editor just after this one. So okay. Oh, it's a bit dark. I'm going to just change the tile set to go with a tile set that was maybe more bright. I don't know, maybe this one. Yeah, so this one should be way less dark. In Neurovoider we add dynamic light, and I have a light tab, and I have a list of lights, and everything is dynamic. I mean, I can just take this light and change its position, or change its color, its size. And I don't know if you see on the stream, but everything that is lightning is real time, and you have a real time preview of this. And this tool is born from Photoshop, because we already had a tile-based editor. I mean, here I have all my tiles and so on, and I can use them to do a portion of the map, and we were assembling maps together and so on. But we add dynamic lighting in the game, and Florian was working in Photoshop, and when he was like doing some preview of how the light should behave in the game, he was using some blending layer and some blending effects from Photoshop, which work completely differently from how lights and blending work in the game. And we have some difficulties to communicate together, to how should we implement lights, why he didn't like it to work on this style-based editor, because he couldn't have a preview of how the lights were working for him in Photoshop, and he was kind of frustrated that the rendering was not the same in the game that it was in Photoshop and that it was in the editor. So what I did is to first implement the light in the game by emulating how Photoshop blends stuff. So basically it's not quite a light system, a typical light system like you would have in any kind of game. I've made a shader that implements the blending functions of Photoshop, and we have a layer of light, and we blend this light like Photoshop would be blending stuff. And that allowed me to also implement that into our editor. And starting from this point, Florian really liked to have this tool, and he made all the levels, he made a ton of the levels, and he found it to be very fun to use. Because he had everything at end, and it was working exactly the way, with the same color and the same kind of blending he had in Photoshop. And that was very important to have this kind of pipeline, because there was less switching between editors, raw files, and Photoshop, and in-game, and so on. So from this point, I wanted to have all our tools to have a live preview of exactly how it works, and also I want to make tools that are useful and efficient to use for any kind of artist, of any kind of designer that are going to use this tool. So if someone comes to me and say, hey, I use Photoshop, and in Photoshop I do this and this, and can you do something for me in your editor? But I'm just going to say, yes, I'm going to do exactly how you use Photoshop into our tool, so that you don't have to go back and forth with Photoshop and so on. Yeah, that's why I love doing tools and so on. It's just it's I find it to be very rewarding to have someone using your tool and telling you that yes, I'm way more efficient and I really like using the tool. So well, but that's the purpose of all kind of tool. So here I have opened another tool, the weapon editor of Neurovoider, and here I believe you are going to back off in your seats when you're going to see this. What's this? Well, so that was our weapon editor. So we had all kind of stuff here with a lot of drop-down menus of lists and so on, which was linked to sounds. So we have one tab for some things that we were calling explosions, which were basically particles. And we were defining what were the sequence of sprites composed into this particle, how they were blending together, how they were like generate explosions were like well, they were looping. I mean, when there was one explosion, it was exploding then into multiple smaller explosions and so on, to have some very complex stuff about explosion. It was not something like just a sequence of sprites. So we had some very complex stuff here, and it was really, I believe, over-engineered. And for the particles also, we had some complex stuff. And here I have the weapon editor. This one is not quite complex, but we have the list of different kind of weapons we had in the game, and we have everything that was bullet velocity, acceleration, firing recoil, bullet per shots, cooldown, if there was some spread, the time to live of each bullet, the consumption, the damage, also the radius of the damage if there was some area damage, screen shaking on impact, on fire, sound effects if there were grenades, lasers, electrical weapons. It was a complex stuff, but it allowed us to make some crazy stuff about the weapons. This is just an editor for our name generation, because here I have, I'm just going to try, this one, no, mods, random 3. So here we have a random item name generator. It's pretty simple. You have some possible names for each type of weapon, some prefixes, some adjectives, some suffix, and it kind of try to mix stuff together. So that was fun stuff to do, because there are some very, very fun weapon like you could have. I mean, if I just try to generate what's going on, some alpha gatling of shiny danger, yeah, big gatling of brother lover. Okay. So that was the kind of stupid stuff that we had, and we just threw some random stuff, and we saw that the more random the word were, the more fun the name were, and that was kind of cool. And yeah, from this experience in Neurovoider, I over engineered a lot of stuff because um, I realized when we made the game that there were some tools that we were only firing like once a week to change a value, and then that's it. So, well, why doing something like a big shiny editor if you have just one value to tweak? So for ScourgeBringer, I have another approach. I mean, everything that is complex and everything that will need to be done like multiple time per day, like editing levels, editing animations, editing bullets, and so on. We want this to have an editor and to be very easy and straightforward to use it and to export into the game. But for anything else, for anything that is kind of static and doesn't change a lot, like particles, like enemies, and bullets, we are now switching to text-based stuff. So I have some JSON file, and where I define everything about enemies. So it's the enemy catalog. So here I have one of my enemies, so it's just the name of the enemy, its sprite size, which texture it uses, which kind of weapon it uses, its charge time, each HP, how the AI behave, how it moves, how it attacks, and so on. What are its collider, what are its animation, sprites, and so on. And this doesn't move quite often. I mean, once you've designed an enemy, it's designed almost once and for good, and you only have to tweak stuff about the design, the difficulty, and so on. But it's really not necessary to have an editor to do this kind of stuff. It's pretty straightforward, and you just edit the file, and here we go. So I'm trying to balance the usefulness of an editor and the frequency of how many times things are going to use to invest time into making it an editor and so on. So yeah. And well, yeah. So that's pretty much it. I think I showed you more stuff that I planned to do today. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, if you have any more questions or maybe any more stuff that you like to see, feel free to ask, or just feel free to ask any questions or Twitter on our Discord server and so on. And if there are any more questions that should arise, I mean, after the stream, it's not a problem. I'm going to try to list them down and try to answer them either into the newsletter or in next week's stream. So yeah, thank you for being there. Thank you for yeah. So for any questions, for any comments, so it was pretty cool today. And I hope that you are having a cooler day than what we are having here in France. It's pretty damn hot here. But yeah, so I wish you a cool day, and thank you for dropping by, and thank you for looking into ScourgeBringer, and hopefully we're going to make a game that you are going to enjoy. And well, thank you, and see you next week, and see you around on Twitter or on our Discord channel. Bye.